All right. So just come to find a comfortable seat, whatever that means to you. And just take a moment to kind of settle into a seat. Root down through your sits bones as you reach and rise through the crown of the head. And then with this opposing kind of set of forces, then also begin to kind of pull in on the low belly to stabilize the core and the spine. And then broaden the collarbones as you roll the shoulder blades down the back. Bring the tip of the tongue to the back of the teeth. And then when you're ready, we'll all start to inhale through the nose. And then when you're ready to exhale, make an internal sound of Om as you breathe out. Inhale through the nose. And then when you're ready to exhale, again, an internal sound of Om. And then last time, inhale through the nose. And then when you're ready, on your exhale, once again, making a final sound of Om, A-U-M, either internally or externally. And then you can start to bring your hands towards your heart. And then bow your head towards your heart to set an intention for your practice. It could be a word, a phrase, or a cause that you can dedicate your time on the mat to. And then when you're ready, we'll all take a round of breath once again to seal our intention. Inhale. And exhale. And you can start to release your hands and open your eyes to come back into this space. All right. So today, the focus, so we've been working with Kriya Yoga, which is like the yoga of action. And so essentially it's like if you can't get to the like union or yogic state, just sitting and meditating, then this is the option for the rest of us, which I really love. My teacher today, she's like the mediocre practitioner, which is like everybody. And I mean mediocre in I include myself in that. And so we've been working through Kriya Yoga, and the practice we worked with last week was tapas, which is this kind of like, it's the action part or the body part where, right, it's that place of friction where it causes us to move and to do. And so this week we're working on the more like verbal internal part, which is called svadhyaya, which is my favorite Sanskrit word ever. But what it means is self-study or the study of the self. And I love this word, and I love intentionally focusing yoga classes on this because essentially all of our yoga practice is a practice of self-study. That when we're spending time on the mat, we are essentially studying ourselves. We are studying our reactions. We are studying us in movement. We're studying us in stillness. We're studying us in quiet. You're studying your breath, right? This is all like our little laboratory where we do our own research. Because oftentimes what's showing up on your mat is usually showing up off of your mat. And so this is self-study in the sense of like, right, learning our own psychology, learning about our own personality. I don't know if you're like me, where every day I find out something new about myself. Sometimes I really like it and I'm like, great. And then other times I'm like, oh no, not this, right? And that honestly were our biggest project, right? And it's so interesting because I feel like oftentimes we do feel like we're doing yoga for like self-improvement, like to become better. And it's actually for self-realization. And so we're really working on studying the self so that we realize, right, our like truest nature, which is that we're not this like small us self, like I'm not just Heather, or I'm not just a yoga teacher, or I'm not just a sister, friend, cat mom, that I'm actually a part of something way bigger than myself. I'm a part of the collective self. There's something in yoga that's known as like the little S self, which is like me and mine, and the big S self, which is us. So on that note, we're gonna work with studying the self. And so what I'd love for us to do is we're gonna start seated. And so if you have a strap, I'm gonna invite you to, and again, you don't have to use it, but it's just really nice feedback. So you're actually gonna stick it around yourself. Actually, I think what you should do is make a small loop out first and then put it around yourself. Okay. And so make it about like, it's getting tangled. Okay. Teaching the strap in yoga is like the hardest thing for me. But I love using it. Okay. So if you've figured out your strap, okay, now you'll put it around yourself. And then you'll come to bring it down by the bottom of your rib basket. So it's like where your floating ribs are. And then you'll cinch up the strap. Okay. And then have a block nearby. And if you're seated cross-legged, now switch the crossing of your feet. And we'll just start by, again, being particular about how we'll sit here. If you feel like your low back is rounding in any way, like you see how it's kind of, you can see how I draw back. Bring that bath towel or blanket underneath your hips so that you can have this nice little natural curve of the back. I'll show you sideways. So if you're feeling like this in any way, if you bring the blanket underneath your hips, kind of right underneath your sits bones, it'll help you angle forward so you at least have a natural curve. Again, you don't want this like kind of banana back, but you want a little curve of the spine. And then come to sit by where like a wall is, or if you have the chair or table, that will be great. And like sit just a little bit farther away. And we'll just start by kind of rooting down through your sits bones. And then from here, as you start to root down through your sits bones, imagine that with each inhale, your crown can reach up. You might even find that closing your eyes here helps you feel this shape from the inside out. And then once again, as you start to kind of reach the pelvis as well as the head in opposite directions, then start to kind of broaden the collarbone and roll the shoulder blades down the back. And then as you sit here, bring your attention to, if you have the strap, or right, if you have an imaginary strap, as you start to breathe here, kind of feel how the body and the strap are in conversation. With each inhale and each exhale. Beginning to study the breath in this shape. Maybe noticing the temperature of the breath as it enters and exits your nostrils. Maybe noticing the texture, whether it feels smooth or jagged. And then kind of watching how your body physically receives the breath. Kind of where in the body does your breath go? Does it go down into the belly? Can you feel it in the rib cage? Or does it stay mostly in the chest? And again, right, we're not trying to improve the breath. We're just trying to notice it. Breathing in and out through the nose as you sit and hold this shape. And then when you're ready, you can slowly start to open your eyes. And then grab your block if you have one, or if you don't have one, we're gonna place the block, so I'll show you sideways, right where the shoulder blades are. So just imagine, so if there's not a real block, you can kind of imagine an imaginary one, that you're pressing the shoulder blades into the block. And then you're gonna bring the block between you and the wall. Again, if you don't have a wall or a block, continue to just sit where you are and imagine, right? Like use your imagination here to like press the space between the shoulder blades on the block and kind of like notice kind of how this changes the shape. Doing a little bit of self-study and rerouting into the seat that you're in. And maybe even closing the eyes here to study the shape from the inside out. Again, keeping the breath as your kind of point of attention as you sit in this shape. And then when you're ready, we'll take 3 more rounds of breath here. And your final exhale, either remove the real block or the imaginary block and set it off to the side. So here, if you like the strap here to feel the breath on the rib cage, you can feel free to keep it. I'm gonna take mine off because I have a tail when I teach. But again, these are things if you like and you like the studying aspect of it, please feel free to keep it. So from here, so if you haven't already, switch the cross of your legs. So we'll start by lifting the left leg up and just grab the foot with the opposite hand and then grab the outside of the knee. And then we'll just start rocking the leg side to side. And then maybe starting to move the shin up slightly. It doesn't have to go very far. It's just kind of like you're rocking, I was gonna say a baby, but this feels kind of weird to like imagine that you're rocking a baby, but if that helps. And so you could stay like this if this feels good. Or you can bring the foot into the armpit and rock the leg a bit more. And then imagine, right, that still you're kind of using that space between the shoulder blades to press back into the imaginary block that we all have now as we rock the hips side to side. And then notice, right, as we continue to do this, right, that you can still be with your breath here and kind of watch and witness what's happening with your breath in your torso and in the rest of the body. All right, and we'll slowly bring this to stillness. And then from here, whether your foot is up or down, you'll start to turn the inside of the foot towards you, kind of like you're trying to look to see if there's like a splinter or something underneath. And then from this place, instead of moving just the foot, you're going to move the whole leg. So instead of just this way, you're moving the whole leg and then placing the foot on the inside of the thigh. okay? Again, with the toes and the bottom of the feet towards you. If your knee is like very high up in the air, bring a brick, pillows, whatever to make the knee a bit more comfortable. And then come to sit and rest. Something that I like doing for if my knee doesn't feel great is you loop the strap and then you pull one of the edges in, kind of like you're making a big knot, and then pulling the strap down. It's kind of a gentle coaxing, so not really a pulling, but it's kind of a gentle coaxing down. But again, only going to a place, right, that you can still stay with your breathing, that's actually the main point of focus, not if the knee can go to the ground. And then once you've kind of chosen your seated posture, just taking a moment or two to anchor your attention back into your breath. Our breath is often our reaction to what's happening internally or externally. And so giving ourselves these moments in yoga to really pay attention to the breath and study it gives us an idea of our like habitual reactions, right? And so this is something for you to watch while you sit in these shapes. All right. And when you're ready, we'll slowly start to transition out of this side. And so you'll lift the foot up with the hand and then maybe rock once or twice back forward and then releasing the foot down. And then we'll switch sides. So drawing the left foot in, the strap. And then you'll first just start to lift the right leg with the right hand or left hand, and then we'll just start to rock the knee back and forth, kind of waking up the hip joint. And so you can start to like bring the calf a bit higher. Again, kind of following what's happening with your body. Again, another thing that we're studying too is like finding our edge points and like learning where we can maybe push a little bit and also learning where we need to step back. And then from here, you can also hook it into the elbow if that feels good for you or feels important. But again, knowing that the most important part of these shapes is the breathing, not necessarily where your foot is. All right. Then from here, we'll start to slow this movement down. And then you'll turn the right toes towards the face. Again, like you're looking for something on the bottom of the foot. And then you'll start to move the whole leg towards the body and then the foot into the hip crease. And then from here, you can start to, it's like you're pressing the thigh away from you instead of pressing the knee down, right? It's like the thigh goes this way and then the knee kind of simultaneously goes down. And again, you can kind of use props to help your body in this shape. And as you can notice, I have two very different sides, and you might also notice in your body you have very different sides. And so I love that the body is kind of shaped like this because we have so many things to study, right? Our differences from right to left, especially if there's injuries in the body that we're working with. That's kind of why my sides are so different. And just thinking of these as like data points for you to research. And if you have more data points, the better. And then once you've kind of found your place to sit, again, imagine that you're pressing the back of the shoulder blades into the block as you're reaching the crown of the head up. And being with each breath. Again, noticing the texture, whether it feels smooth or continues to be jagged. Also noticing where you're breathing as you continue to hold this shape. And from here, we'll start to lift up the foot. Maybe rocking it side to side to like undo it a little bit and then releasing the foot down. And then from here, start to just bring the feet out in front of you and maybe moving hips side to side. Neutralizing the pelvis a little bit. And then again, we're gonna stay seated and start to bring your feet towards you. Okay. So, and again, as we move through these shapes, we're gonna stay seated. So if you find, again, that in any of these shapes, if there's like a curving of the low back, feel free to grab a blanket or a pillow to sit on top that can kind of help your pelvis move forward so that there's a more neutral spine. And in these seated postures, we're more focused on length because we want the spine to feel really long here and grounded. All right, so now start to bring the feet together. Hi, Momo. Move over here. Okay, so now start to bring the feet together. And I like to bring my thumbs into the bottoms of my feet to spread them out, kind of like a book. And first just warming them up. And maybe even giving your feet a little bit of massage. You're standing right in front of the important part, Momo. Okay. And then start to kind of lift off of your feet. And we'll bring our hands back behind us with the fingertips pointed away from you. And so as you start to bring the fingertips back behind you, then, and you might have to move the blanket forward to do this if you're sitting on a blanket, then move your hips towards your feet rather than moving the feet towards your hips so that it's coming out of the pelvis rather than the knee. And from this place, now start to root down through your sits bones and reach up through the crown of the head. And then from this place, imagine that the inside of the thighs are pulling away from your pelvis. So it's like this pushing out. Not necessarily knees down, but a pushing out. And then from the outside of the knees, it's like it's pulling up, lifting up towards your pelvis as you continue to press into the fingertips and reach through the crown of the head. And then maybe even closing your eyes here to study the shape from the inside. And coming back to monitoring your breathing. Having your breath in these postures being the main point of focus for you. Your main thesis as we work through these shapes. And then from here, we'll take 3 rounds of breath. Again, continuing with really active legs and a really long spine. While still engaging the core, so the low belly is pulled in and it's not this overarching of the back. And then when you're ready, you'll start to release the hands and come back. All right, so we're gonna do this again. And this time you can either keep the feet on the floor or now you can bring a block if you have a block or a book. and place your feet on the brick. And then again, we'll play around with moving the hips forward towards the feet rather than the feet towards the hips. And then bring your hands behind you, fingertips pointed away. So it's like this behind you. And that you're also tented up on the fingers. I'm going to turn to the side so you can see it that way. And so as you continue to sit here, right, grounding down through the sits bones, and then reaching up through the crown of the head. As you pull in on the low belly and then draw, again, the insides of the thighs outward and draw the outsides of the thighs inward towards the body. Breathing here. And continuing to notice your breath. And then we'll take 1 or 2 more full rounds of breath. And then when you're ready, slowly releasing the hands and then moving the hips back, removing the block and then bringing the feet down. All right. So then from here, extending the legs out, maybe bending the knees and windshield wipering the legs from side to side. All right. So I'll keep kind of in the side seated position. He loves the chair. He always comes and sits on the chair every time I bring it out. He thinks it's for him. Yeah, there you go. All right. So from here, again, we're going to have our legs extended outward. And so if you feel this slight rounding, just bring a blanket underneath your hips to help facilitate that. And then you'll bring your hair tie or your rubber band and bring it around your big toes. So you want to bring the big toes together. And then from this place, you'll start to flex at the ankles and draw the toes towards your face. And then bring your hands behind you with the fingertips pointed back. Or if you have blocks, you can bring the yoga blocks right beside you. It's kind of weird with my blanket, but you can bring them beside you to press into them so that you can extend the spine up. If you have really long arms, you can also bring the hands down beside you to help lift. But my arms are not that long, so I have to use the fingertips behind me. And so from here, right, strengthening your legs here. So it's like the fronts of the legs are pulling up towards you. So from the ankle crease all the way up to the hip flexors, there's this pulling sensation. While from behind your legs, you're reaching out through the heels, as well as pressing down through the sits bones and reaching up through the crown of the head. And then also pulling the low belly in, right? So the pubis towards the navel. So it's pulling up and then in as you continue to breathe here. And again, maybe even closing the eyes to study the shape from the inside out as you watch your breathing here and studying your breath as you study the shape. And kind of notice in these more kind of quiet shapes if there are thoughts that are kind of coming into your awareness. And maybe even starting to study those a little bit. Knowing if, or watching, or maybe even considering if they're repeating, if they have a tendency to be self-negating. Again, just watching and noticing. And then we'll take 1 or 2 more full rounds of breath here. And then exhale to release. and soften down. All right. So if you have the rubber band or hair tie around the toes, take the rubber band off, and I'm going to switch sides so you can see me. All right. So you're in Dandasana, which is the staff pose. And then from here, you'll grab the inside of the right leg, and it's like you're kind of opening a curtain. So you'll draw the right leg out to the side. So it's both a up and out. All right. And then we'll start to cross it and then do exactly what you did before, where we kind of rocked it side to side. Again, you can use the hand or the elbow, kind of making a choice for you, maybe even moving the leg up and down, or the shin. And then moving forward and back. And then the next time you move it across, again, it's like that turn, the foot's turning towards you, but then it's drawing to the side. Okay. And then your knee will stack kind of more or less over your other knee. If that doesn't feel good, you can always just put the foot down and just have the knee up. So this is one option, or you can, right, continue it this way. So this is like option number 2, option number 1. All right, the next kind of option. So you'll lean over to the extended leg side and then start to bend that knee and draw it back behind you. Okay. I'm keeping a blanket underneath my hips to like help that neutral spine tilt. But you get to decide what feels meaningful to you. And then, so your feet being closer to your hips, less intense. Moving them away, more intense. Oh, very intense for me. And so as you start to do this, flex the ankles, because when you flex the ankles, it strengthens the muscles around the knee joint so that the knee joint is protected here, or there's some co-contraction and engagement. And then bring your hands to the soles of your feet. And as you root down through the hips, once again, right, I sound like a broken record, but you start to reach up through the crown of the head and then pull in on the belly as you hold this shape. All right, we're going to keep with the really long spine here and just focusing on the hip flexion as well as the ankle flexion and knee flexion. There's lots of flexion, right? And then maybe bringing your attention back to your breathing as you hold this shape. And noticing, right, if this, how your breath might shift, if this pose feels a bit more challenging for you, or if there's more sensation happening, or even if this pose feels really easy and almost boring, right? Noticing what's happening with your breathing while you hold this shape. We'll hold it for 3 more rounds of breath. And when you're ready, then we'll start to move the left leg back and then stack the left ankle over the right knee, or that was the wrong foot. So you bring the right foot over the left knee, flex both of the ankles, and then draw the right inside of the thigh away. So from here, if your leg doesn't reach the foot, grab that blanket or your bath towel to like make sure that there's a soft space for the knee to land, but then also that the leg can kind of move there and have some place to go. While still prioritizing, right, having that natural curve of the low back, and extension of the spine. And then breathing into this shape. And studying for yourself why this pose is called fire log. Continue to be with the breath. And maybe notice, right, in those moments that you're not with the breath, kind of studying where your attention does go. Again, are there repeats? Does it have a tendency to go to maybe a aversion or what's unpleasant or what's pleasant? And knowing that there's no right or wrong answers, you're just here to do some observation and collect some data. And when you're ready, on your next inhale, we'll start to extend. So kind of moving the right leg up and then extend the right leg away from you. And then extend the left leg away from you. And then we'll take a moment in Dandasana. So just stretch out the legs, bring the big toes together, kind of imagine that there's that hair tie again. As you reach up through the crown of the head and press down through the sits bones. We'll take one more breath. And then when you're ready, then start to bring your left hand to the inside of the left thigh. And like, again, like you're pulling a curtain, the left leg goes over to the left. And then we'll grab the left foot with the right hand and then start to rock the leg. You can even cradle the side with the arm. You can always bring the foot to the elbow as you move the leg forward and back. Maybe even moving the shin up and down. Just moving and adding movement into the joints. And then eventually coming to a place of stillness. And then starting to draw the leg up and over. And then draw the foot either down towards the floor with the knee up. Or, again, kind of like that Baddha Konasana shape where we started to turn the foot towards us and then draw it back towards your back, your right hip. Okay, so this is option number 2. Then, if you're wanting the third option, you lean over towards the extended leg and then draw the foot back. So you want the knees more or less stacked. I don't really do that because my legs are very different from themselves. Another way to help fix that is if you come into a tabletop, moving forward and then sitting your hips back. Sometimes it helps. With mine, I think my legs are just too different, but that's fine. All right. And then from here, right, more intense is moving feet away, less intense is moving feet towards your hips. And then flexing at the ankles, just strengthen the muscles around the knee joint. As you root down through the sits bones and reach up through the crown of the head. And then if it feels comfortable for you here, you can start to maybe close the eyes and again, study the shape, your breath from the inside out. Using these postures as your own laboratory to watch and witness and discover your own psychology. To be the seen, seeing, and the seer. And when you're ready, slowly opening your eyes if they're closed. And then we'll move the right leg over as you draw the kind of left leg forward. And then we'll start to stack the shins on top of each other. Again, kind of a sharp flex of the ankles. And then you can start to draw the inside of the left thigh away as you rest in this side. Again, using maybe a bath towel or a blanket to support the knee. And then rooting down through your hips, reaching up through the crown of the head. Closing your eyes and again, engaging in self-study and research. And oftentimes, right, it's not a self-study to be like narcissistic or self-involved, but more self-aware by engaging in being curious, to practice understanding ourselves so that we can be more understanding of the bigger self. And when you're ready, if your eyes are closed, you can slowly start to open them. And then we'll start to lift this leg up, extend it out in front of you, and then we'll extend the right leg in front. Giving yourself a round or two of breath in Dandasana. Who knew this could be a resting shape? And then when you're ready, eventually kind of inviting movement into the legs and into the body. All right. So now here's the why I asked you to bring a chair. So I'll show you the options without a chair, and then I'll show you with the chair. So we're gonna work on hero's pose. So first watch the options that I'm giving. And then we'll all do it together. So hero's pose, your feet are pointer, they're plantar flexion, so the ankles are long, the front of the ankles are long. And then you'll bring a block or a brick between the feet, or a bolster or pillow, like so, or blankets, or bath towels that are folded kind of so that there's a long way underneath, okay? And then you'll bring it up between your knees, and then you'll kind of drag and pull the calf muscle away, and then comes to sit back. Okay. So now grab your, actually, no, I'll show you first, and then I'll have you play around. So you'll have to find what feels comfortable for you and height, right? So less intense and less pressure on the knees is the hips are going to be higher, okay? So from here, you can just sit. If this feels like enough for the front of the thighs, feel free to stay here. Some days, like my quads are so tight that like, I'm like, this is, just leave me here, right? And so we'll sit like this for maybe 5 rounds of breath. And then we'll start to lean back. So if you don't have props or a chair, you can just use your hands and walk your hands back as far as it feels comfortable. You can drop onto your elbows. Or you can stretch back into lying on the floor if that's in your practice. If you have a chair or a prop, my preference is for you to have something like this, because I'd love it to be a bit more restorative, but again, you get to kind of do what you'd like. You're in your own living space. So, but I'll show you with the chair. I was doing it before this class and it felt quite luxurious, so I'm wanting everybody to experience it. So from here, I'm actually going to bring 2 folded blankets on top of each other. And then bring them between my thighs and then outwardly rotate my shins. And then grab a brick or a pillow. And so from here, you'll grab the chair and then, oops, have the chair against the wall so that the chair doesn't move. And then you'll bring that spot between the shoulder blades that we had earlier with the brick on the wall or the imaginary brick. And you'll bring that on the chair. And you'll just start to lean back this way. And you'll still keep the thighs drawing down and in. And then you'll lean the arms back. And you can either, you can grab opposite elbows. And so you can have the head hanging. Or my preference is that you bring a brick or a pillow underneath so that your head can have something to rest on, and then you can extend your arms back, grabbing at the elbows and reaching back like this. And then letting your breath be soft here. So that's where we're going. So now if you haven't already, start to kind of play with the props that you have, right? So you either have kind of standard yoga props or you have like your own kind of mishmash of whatever you got around the house. And so find your comfortable hero's pose. If there's some tension or if the ankles don't feel comfortable this way, roll up a blanket and place it underneath this way so that there doesn't have to be so much pulling on the front of the feet, because that can also be pretty intense. Okay. And so as you start to sit here, so it's really important that the toes feel like they're pointing back and that the quadriceps are pulling down towards the knees so that there's this pressing down that's happening forward towards the floor. And then you can decide here if like this feels like enough of just sitting here, you can stay, or you can play around with maybe moving back. But again, you get to decide what feels meaningful and important. A good way of gauging what shape to do, especially as we get to the more like cooling down parts of class, is cueing into the breath, right? And noticing, right, after kind of spending the whole class studying your breath, right, using your breath as this way of, right, if the breath feels forced or constricted, right, it means that your body or the shape feels constricting. If your breath is able to be smooth, long, and even slow right now, right, that means that you're comfortable, that you can rest here, that your nervous system is kind of telling you that you're in this like passive, restful place. So letting your breath, right, and your relationship that you are building with your breath guide what shape you choose. And we'll hold this maybe for another minute. And knowing, right, if you've chosen a shape that starts to feel uncomfortable in a way that is changing the breath or making the breath hard to pay attention to, know that you can always change the shape you're in. That you can always restart. And then when you're ready, Begin to bring your attention back into the shape. And then walk your hands beside you if you've gone into the back bend, and slowly using your hands to lift your torso back up. If your arms are out behind you, right, just bringing them down. And then we'll come forward and then move the props between your feet. And then start to transition into your lying down shape. So just moving on to your outer hip and then extending the legs out in front. If you have a chair with you, that's convenient. If you like, you can bring your shins on the chair. Or you can just extend your feet out long for your final resting shape. So doing whatever you need to, using whatever props or support that feel intuitive. As you transition into the quiet part of your practice, where you release your attention on the breath and expand your awareness to witness the experience of Shavasana in your body and the culmination of your practice while we rest for the final moments of class in silence. Begin to bring your attention back to your breath. And then slowly begin to invite your senses to come back into the space you're in. And then as you start to feel prepared or ready, start to invite movement into your body. And then use the next 30 seconds or so to make your transition up to a comfortable seat. And then once you're seated, you can bring your palms face down on your thighs or your hands together in front of your heart. As I invite you to bow your head towards your heart center, to acknowledge that our yoga practice is not for self-improvement, but for self-realization. That when we show up on our mats, we are actively participating in studying ourselves so that we can understand the bigger and larger self that rests in our community and in the world around us. Thank you so much for participating in this class with me today. and for doing the deep work to understand your own psychology. A big, deep bow of gratitude to every single one of you. Thank you.
Thank you.